Hi, my name is Aysia Gilbert. That's Aysia. I am here with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And I am here with, could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Rahimah Rahim, spelled R-A-H-I-M-A-H-R-A-H-I-M.
All right. Could you tell us a little bit about your son?
Yes, I have a statement here that I prepared, and I call it 10 minutes to explain 26 years.
Wow.
So I'm here today to demand to reopen all the cases and to prosecute the police and the FBI officials. I'm a registered nurse in my community and have been for over 4 decades. My family has been practicing Islam for over 60 years. We are descendants of people brought to America, enslaved, and robbed over 400 years ago. Yet we have remained faithful to the ideals of justice and equality. My son Usaamah Rahim was killed on June 2nd, 2015, by the Boston Police and the FBI in what is known as the Joint Task Force. My son, who was 26 years old, was killed while he stood waiting for a bus at about 6:50 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. He lived with me and had left for work that morning, as he always had done. He took his usual route through the back parking lot to the CVS parking lot to wait at the bus stop. He was speaking on his cell phone with his dad, who was a teacher in Miami and who was dying from cancer. Usaamah was suddenly surrounded by 5 to 7 heavily armed undercover police, men and women, and FBI agents. They later stated they only approached him to speak with him, yet within a few seconds of approaching him, they fired 3 shots that killed him, once in the chest, once in the groin, and once in his shoulder in the back. His father heard the noise while he was on the phone with him. Usaamah was not a terrorist. He was a hardworking young black man who had attended college, aspired to be a husband and father, aspired to be a journalist, aspired to be a criminologist. All his hard work and aspirations were lost the day he was gunned down. Gunned down by people who targeted him because of his religion and his color. Police recordings stated in the records, they said, "We're going to take down that black man at the bus stop." So the story changed. Such liars. They lied later, saying my son attacked them with a knife, ultimately leading to the officers killing him. Such liars. They fabricated a so-called terrorist plot story, then killed my son. And that wasn't the end. They imprisoned my grandson, who they were like 9 months apart in age, and they were very best friends growing up. My grandson was 25 years old at the time. So at the same time, they killed my son. They invaded my daughter's house where my grandson lived, and they informed him, "We just killed your uncle." You, my people, know the Muslim brothers and sisters in your communities have been positive impacts in helping to maintain good, wholesome, and family-oriented communities. Don't believe the hype of the police authorities as they try to cover up their wrongdoings and divide us, me from you. My life is forever changed. Usaamah was the youngest of my children. He left behind 3 older brothers and 2 older sisters. We're still grieving to this day. I cry quietly to myself each and every day, remembering my son and the life that was snatched away from him. My life goes on, but is different now. No jokes and laughter from the younger son. His booming, joyful voice doesn't fill the house. He often led the prayers in our house, and his voice was deep, beautiful, and melodious. He often joked to me, "Mom, you know I'm your favorite because I'm the youngest." And I would joke right back, "Usaamah, all of you are my favorites. He would give me a big smile and a chuckle, and he'd say, "Someday, Mom, there'll be a lot of little Usaamas running around, and you'll babysit them, right?" That will never happen now. Help us to demand a reopening of the cases and prosecution of the police. This is Usaamah. You see, he was known since he was a baby for his smile. He was just that type of a guy.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about how his death has impacted you and your family?
It's that's my granddaughter that's over there. The death has impacted us greatly, not only when they killed him, but the fact that they imprisoned my grandson. So my grandson was snatched from that part of the family, my son from my house, and the children suffer from that. My granddaughter Aysia is 19 now, but it happened 6 years ago. So she was a teenager. And just the fact that for 3 days after they killed my son, they roped off my house. I couldn't get into my house. They impounded my car. My son never drove, so he never used my car. Why did they need to impound my car? And they just made it miserable. We had to flee. We felt like we were fleeing from hotel to hotel to try and get safety. And everywhere we went, the news was blasting. Terrorist plot uncovered. It was such a lie. It was the day before or the day after the Patriot Act was about to expire. And a lot of these guys, FBI and so on and so forth, needed some kind of a big story. So my son wasn't the only one that was killed around that time period throughout the United States. There were others that were killed. The same thing. Oh, we uncovered this. They didn't uncover anything. They made it up. So my grandson is still sitting in prison. And for 2 years, he was in solitary confinement. And, we're hoping to get him freed because there's no charges, nothing.
Wow, so he's just sitting there waiting for a trial?
He had a trial, and during the trial, they had a quote-unquote special witness who was a guy from Yemen who testified that the FBI hired him. They gave him $20,000 and promise of a green card for him and his family in Yemen if he would befriend my grandson on Facebook and follow him around and that type of thing. And so he did. He befriended my grandson on Facebook. And so he was the FBI quote-unquote informant. Mm-hmm. And he got on the stand, and it was all a lie. He got there, and my grandson's attorney said, "Did you ever meet David Wright?" That's my grandson. And he said, oh yeah, and she said, "Did you give the report to the FBI?" "Oh, yes. Where did you meet him?" And he lied about, he met him in the station, South Station in Boston and everything. And they said, "Did they pay you?" He said, "Yeah, every time I gave him information, they would pay me." "How'd they pay you? Cash, check?" "Sometimes cash, sometimes, whatever." And then she said, "When did you meet him?" And he said the date that he met him, which is the date that was a big snowstorm in Boston. So she said, everything was closed down on that date. She had the calendar there. There was a snowstorm. And he said, oh, well, then it wasn't that date. I met him. She said, "What date?" And she said, "I met him on this date, another date." And then she said, "Why is it that David, my grandson, said in one of the chats with you, 'I wish I had gotten to meet you'?" But see, my grandson had gotten a full scholarship to study abroad, and he was leaving in a few days, actually. That shut it right down. And the guy said, "Well," and she said, "Did you ever really meet him?" He said, "No, I never met him." So you would have thought that case would be thrown out. It was not. It continued, even though their key witness, the FBI informant, was a liar. And then during my grandson's trial, there were a lot of FBI agents in the audience and in the courtroom, and a lot of police officers, almost like to intimidate the family, So during the lunch break for the jury, one of the FBI agents took one of the jurors out to lunch and chatted with him for over an hour. And then he came back to the jury pool and infected them with his information. The judge found out that he had met with the FBI over lunch and said, okay, well, he's out, that jury member is out. But he had already spoken to everybody. You would have thought they would have called the mistrial. They did not. The case went on. They convicted my grandson of these trumped up charges, and he's been sitting in prison ever since.
Wow.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah.
So you mentioned the task force.
Yeah.
There's a mayoral election in Boston. There's a mayoral election in Boston that's coming up, and some of the candidates have proposed getting rid of the task force. Are you aware of that?
No, I was not aware.
But the task force was something that kind of came out of, you mentioned the Patriot Act, obviously a result of 9/11, but then also the Boston Marathon bombing, which I think it just caused like a restructuring of the relationships between local and federal authorities in Boston. Can you talk about Islamophobia and racism in Boston and how you think that's impacted this case?
I think that it impacted it greatly because, unfortunately, 2015 was the year, wasn't it, of the marathon bombing. So Boston was already hyped up, and all the police had to do to cover themselves was to say, oh, he was a terrorist. And then everybody's like, he deserved to go. One police officer in his, and the police chat room that I got access to, he said, it's better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. In other words, they don't mind killing you.
Wow.
I mean, because do they ever get to trial? No. So, but that's the motto that the soldiers usually use, when they're abroad. These police think that they're fighting a war. We're civilians, we're citizens, and they're treating us as though they're in some kind of a war situation. Heavy armor. When they broke into my grandson's apartment, they had flash bombs. They just, her oldest sister was in the house at the time. She went flying out. She didn't know what was going on. They used a battering ram to get into his apartment. Her sister fled down the back stairs barefoot, not knowing what was going on. And when she got outside, there were people there with the AK-14 or whatever those rifles are, standing on the rooftops. My family's been traumatized, the whole family.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one more and then I'll open this up? There's some families here who have cases from last summer. There's some families here who have cases from 10 years ago. Coming out here today and doing the same thing you've been doing. You wrote a book. You've been speaking on every avenue that you can. How do you keep hope alive when you see these kinds of cases continue to happen? Yeah. Do you ever feel like it's just not doing anything? I mean, she's supposed to meet with the district attorney next month. Sorry if I'm not.
Yes, in September, finally.
Right.
The new DA.
Right. Yeah. And so are you hoping that, how do you keep going? How do you keep maintaining this?
Yeah. That's a good question, yes. We just keep going. And like some of the other mothers and families that you see here, some of them have been doing this for as long as I, or a little bit longer. And we just keep hoping. Because, the Constitution is a good piece of paper if it's followed. We have good laws if the laws are followed. But we just have to enforce them. And the DA, the new DA, says that she'd willingly open the cases. My son's case was never open. He was tried and killed right there on the spot. Yeah. We never had a case. The old DA said, it was okay. They killed him and we can't find any justice, it was justified, that type of thing. And so, but we still have hope. We still have hope, Yeah.
And I know that you are saying that you want the case to be reopened, but above that, what does justice look like for you and your family?
I've been thinking about that. Justice for me is, and one good thing that did come out of us challenging is that Freedom of Information Act. The judge ruled in our favor because what happened is the FBI and the Boston police, tried to pass the buck from one to the other. Well, we can't release information to you because you know, it's confidential, it's that, I'm sorry, it's confidential, and, you know, back and forth and back and forth, and we can't use the Freedom of Information Act because it's FBI papers. FBI lent it to us. It wasn't paper that we owned, so therefore how can we share it? But the judge ruled that no, some things were part of the Freedom of Information Act, and they have to release that information to us. So the justice I'd like to see done is the fact that they open up the case and show that our families weren't involved in anything at all.
Yeah.
Clear my son's name, clear my grandson's name, and prosecute the police and the FBI and the higher ups that ordered it.
That keep on allowing it to happen. And that keep on allowing
They keep allowing it. They just keep allowing it. And then, you know, it's just, you know, in this case, I feel really saddened because here we are, and I'm going to bring it up. There was the guy, what's his name, Khashoggi? Or something that was killed in France or killed in Turkey or something, that there was a big outcry from us that he was killed, ordered to be killed by some foreign government because they didn't like what he said. Well, my son was the same. And we did it here in America. And we said there's freedom of speech. They didn't like what he said as a Muslim, and so therefore they're going to kill him. So,
yeah, just getting that.
I'm hoping for them to be tried and prosecuted, and I want it to go all the way up the ladder to the top, because that's where it came from.
Exactly. And I know that we're at this amazing event today, so how can we honor your son and continue to show up for you and your family?
Well, you know, this is just a wonderful event, and thank God there's a breeze that's coming now.
Finally.
Thank you. And, you know, just helping us to keep their names alive, you know, that they weren't just nobody to be just brushed aside. Their lives mattered.
Right. And getting the truth out about who they actually were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who they really were.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Well, thank you for your time. And thank you for your bravery and your fight, you know, and continuing on, because this means so much for the community. So thank you, of course.
All right.